So the Neo 2 is a great little drone with really fantastic ability to track and to use for vlogging and even for a little bit of cinematic stuff. But it has one fantastic feature which I think really makes it stand out from a lot of the other drones out in this beginner price bracket, and that is the ability to fly it FPV, full manual, full acro mode. Now, I am very new to this. I've spent a lot of time flying gimbal camera drones, and I have got a lot of cinematic footage, done a bit of vlogging, YouTubing, etc, etc. But I am very new to the world of full FPV. It's quite daunting. I have spent some time in the simulator, and if, like me, you are coming from the world of gimbal drones, then you probably are feeling a little bit nervous about giving all of that control of the drone over to you. Now, I have tried to fly this once before in full acro, and it didn't end well. In fact, it ended with me activating a DJI Care refresh. I was a bit stupid and a bit hasty in getting into FPV, and I didn't really look at exactly how this controller operates, and when I came into land, I tried to land it in manual mode and it didn't go well. Now, I have since learned that there's this lovely little pause button here. Now, whenever you're flying in full acro, if it gets a little bit out of hand, then just tap that pause button and the drone will just sit stock still in the sky, give you a chance to breathe, and if you're ready to go back into full manual, you can do so, or you can just flick it into normal, come in and land, and hopefully not have to activate a DJI Care refresh like I did. This time, I have got a lot more hours in the simulator. Not loads, I've got 15 hours, and before I only had 2.5, 3 hours in the simulator. And I've learned exactly how to use this controller now as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it up for a proper first flight. Let's ignore that last one, shall we? And I'll hopefully talk you guys through some of the settings that are required to get your drone up in full acro mode, because there are a few settings that you do need to tweak before it will let you actually fly in full acro. And if you haven't already done so, I can thoroughly recommend using any drone simulator that you can find. I've been using Uncrashed on my PC, but there are loads of others. I know that Liftoff is very highly rated as well, and it really has helped me get to grips with exactly how you control the drone when you are in full manual. So without further ado, let's stick the goggles on, get the drone fired up, and see if I can do it this time without slamming it into the ground. Whoa, 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 not so hasty. This is what happens when you try to jump the gun learning FPV. So, before we get that drone up in the air, let's dive into the simulator and see if we can get to grips with the controls first. We are going to have a quick crash course in how to fly FPV. No pun intended there, but it is always better for us to crash in the sim than it is with our real drone in real life. First thing that we need to look at is exactly what the controls do. Now, we will be using an actual FPV controller, which is plugged into our PC, and there are a number of reasons why we want to use this rather than a standard game controller. Number one is you will notice that the sticks are longer and thinner, which will enable us to have more fine control over the drone. And the other main reason is the fact that on a standard controller like this one here, both the right stick and the left stick will auto center on both X and Y axis. We don't want that. We want our throttle to be able to be controlled and left and set. So we auto center X on the right stick and Y on the right stick. We auto center X on the left stick, but it does not auto center on the Y. When this arrives from DJI, this will automatically spring back, so you want to change that. Okay, so Now a brief description of what each of these sticks does. First of all, the right hand stick. On the y-axis, that controls our pitch, so it will tilt our drone forward and backwards. And on the x-axis, that will control our roll, so we can roll to the right or to the left. On the left stick, if we use the x-axis here, we are going to yaw the aircraft, so we'll rotate around that axis. And as we've mentioned already, on the y-axis, that is our throttle. So let's quickly dive into the sim itself and have a little look to see what does what. Now you can see I've got a little representation on the screen of each of these stick inputs that I'm using as well, but I will keep this image on screen so you can see me manually putting these inputs in, so you can see how little movement is required. So first what we're going to do is we're going to hover, but when you hover you are going to need to control your pitch and your roll to try and keep the drone from going too far forwards or backwards. So let's get a bit of height. Now when you go in real life you're going to want some height because you'll give yourself more time to correct any issues. Okay, so let me drop the throttle a bit. Now you can see I'm just putting tiny input in here, pitch forward and back, and roll right and left, and I can keep it in pretty much the same place. Pretty standard. Now where things start to get a little bit different is actually when you are flying forwards in directions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase my throttle and I'm going to pitch forwards. So there we go, we're now flying forwards. That is all good. If I want to turn and I yaw, you'll notice because I'm flying forwards I end up flying in the same direction. So let's now pitch forwards, so I start flying in this direction again. So, controlling my throttle here, I want to turn to the right. Not only am I going to yaw, but I will roll to the right as well. So you're going to have a slight right stick input to the right and a slight left stick input to the right simultaneously to be able to keep this tilted forward view while you're flying. And obviously exactly the same principle applies if you are trying to turn to the left. Left stick, left input, right stick, left input. Okay, right, so it does take a little bit of getting used to, but that isn't too bad. Now what we want to do is start to consider how we want to control our throttle in flight. If I am flying forwards, at the moment I am maintaining altitude here. But if I tilt forwards to fly faster, some of that upward momentum is now pulling me forward, so I'm losing altitude. So let's spin around, we'll go back this way. To achieve that faster flight, if I tilt right forwards, I need to give myself more throttle to keep myself from dropping out of the sky. So basic recap. Once we've got our throttle set, we can use our right stick to roll and pitch to aim the drone effectively, and we can use the left stick to yaw and increase and decrease the throttle. Flying around doing basic turns, both sticks inputting at the same time, flying figure of eights, changing speed and trying to maintain altitude are all nice little practices for you to start to make the controls feel second nature. And I'm not going to pretend to be good in any way, shape or form, but once you have got used to that, you can start experimenting with acro and doing flips and rolls. Now one thing I will say about the sim is this particular sim doesn't unless I haven't found a setting, doesn't seem to simulate wind effects. So when you are flying in real life for the first time, you will find that wind does buffet your drone and affect your flight, and you will need to get used to that. So put the hours into the sim, and after a while you'll find that things start to feel like second nature. You won't necessarily have to think as much about flying. You will just do it and things will start to work. I wouldn't remotely pretend to be some kind of guru here because I am just a beginner myself, but just trust me when I say it will start to feel easier with a little bit of practice. Okay, before we actually take to the skies with the Neo 2, there are 3 more points that I would like to mention with regards to the DJI FPV 3 controller. First of all, we already touched briefly on this throttle axis and how you do not want that to auto return to center. Now, to do that, all you've got to do is, with the aid of a flat blade screwdriver, peel back this rubberized cover, which exposes 2 recesses labelled as F1 and F2. Now those will take, I think it's a 2mm hex key. F2, if you tighten that down, that will stop the auto return on that throttle lever. And F1, if you tighten that or loosen it, that adjusts the tension on that particular lever. So having it nice and tight like I do means there's less chance that I'm going to knock it out of position. Some people like it nice and easy to move, so they'll have that F1 slightly looser. The second point is this button here, the pause button. Familiarise yourself with that. If everything goes a little bit squiffy when you are in flight, you can tap that button and the drone will correct itself and sit stock still until you are ready to take control back, giving yourself a little bit of time to gather your thoughts and hopefully prevent a crash with the drone. Do be aware, and you'll see this in some of the footage that I'm going to show in a minute, of my son having his first go in FPV. He needed to use that button. He was in a bit of a spiral downwards. He hit that, had the presence of mind to hit it quite quickly, and the drone corrected itself, but because he was in a spiral, he still lost probably 10 meters of altitude before the drone corrected. So the higher you fly, the safer you are, the more chance there is that the drone's going to be able to catch itself before you hit the ground. And the last thing to mention, you will notice in the footage that I'm about to show that I, being the absolute beginner that I am with FPV, didn't adjust the angle of my gimbal. It was looking straight forwards. Now if I quickly grab the Neo 2, when you're flying, obviously you're going to be tilted forward and flying forwards. Now if your drone is looking straight ahead, if your gimbal is pointing straight ahead, when that's leaning forward, you're going to be looking slightly at the ground. That is not ideal. So you want to adjust your gimbal up slightly so that when your drone is flying forward, the actual camera is looking up slightly. Right, without further ado, let's hit the skies and see what we can do in full acro mode with the Neo 2. Okay, so let's quickly fly through the setting changes you need to make within the goggles. We're taking off in normal mode here. I didn't mention it a minute ago, but there's a little rocker button next to the pause button on the front of the controller, and that's normal, sport and manual. We have got it set in normal and we are flying into safe air and gaining a bit of altitude. As we are slowly gaining altitude, we're going to go into the menu on our left hand side and change the settings required to give us full manual. So into settings, into control, into remote controller, and then button customization at the bottom, sport mode. If you click on that and change it to manual, when you hit the rocker to manual, it will go into manual. Now go over to Gain and Expo, and once we are in there, we want to go down to M mode attitude limit. That needs to be off. If that is on, then it will limit how far you can pitch and roll, and it won't let you do full acro and won't let you go upside down. Now we need to click it into manual, and we've got to get our sticks into the green marks before it will hand full control of the drone over to us. And now we are in the right position. It switched us to manual mode. I'm going to do a few turns and a few loops and some basic acro here, nothing too major. You'll notice this is where, being the idiot that I am, not having the gimbal looking up slightly means I'm pointing down at the ground, and it is not the best viewpoint. That I will correct next time I fly, and hopefully it will be a better experience. You'll also notice that I've got very jerky inputs, and I'm struggling to adjust to the fact that I'm flying with wind now, which obviously I didn't have when I was in the sim. And hopefully more practice, more flights, I'll be able to iron out some of those jerky movements. But thanks to the sim, I do feel a lot more comfortable in this flight, knowing that I can pull myself out of these dives without accidentally putting the incorrect stick input in. And yeah, we've got a little back flip there, and I think we'll flip it into a little front flip, and hopefully I'll stick a barrel roll in so you can see what they look like. But yeah, sorry if anybody feels a little bit queasy watching this footage. That is largely down to the fact that I'm a complete beginner, but hey, practice will hopefully make perfect.
There is a wasp. There was a wasp right next to your arm.
Hand under?
Oh, hand. Oh, it's filming me. Oopsies. Flipped it round. It's filming me now.
Yes, lovely, you cocky little squirt. Thank you very much, Isaac. Now here he is having his first ever go FPV, and he has a lot less hours in the sim than me. I think he's got probably about 6, but he's taken to it quite nicely, and he is very sensibly utilising altitude. That is your friend when you're learning here. He is giving himself the absolute maximum room for error and for correction, and that comes into its own right here. So he goes into a bit of tries to do a spiral dive, but then everything collapses, but he has the presence of mind to quickly hit that pause button, and you can see how the drone collects itself quite nicely. But after he hit the pause button, he did still drop a good 10 meters, so that altitude pretty much saved his bacon there. But all in all, very happy little bunny. Now I think I am going to steal those goggles and have another quick flight, see how this one goes. Not particularly smooth yet, but slightly better than I was in my first flight. Just getting to grips with it really, and each time I get that drone up in the air and the goggles on, feeling a little bit more comfortable. And no complaints with this drone really. I mean, for the money that you're paying, I think it's fantastic that you can use this drone for any kind of cinematic photography, any follow me stuff, but it also is a good way to learn FPV. Having that pause button on that controller there, it's a great entry into freestyle drone flying, which I'm pretty certain further down the line is going to lead to me potentially building my own and getting into FPV flying properly. I can see quite easily how this becomes very addictive very quickly. Okay, so that was Isaac's very first time real life FPV. He's got half the sim time that I have and he's already better. It's frustrating, but that's because his generation is far more used to using a controller than I am. But success, neither of us crashed. We both got a few rolls and flips, front and back, and some drops and some drop turns. And I think we need to go into that sim and start learning a few more tricks, eh, Isaac, so we can give them a go in real life. Yeah, excellent. Right, well, success, and hopefully in that little tutorial you have a little bit of an understanding of exactly how you can transfer from gimbal drone pilot to FPV pilot. And I have a sneaking suspicion that this might be the start of some tinkering, and I'm sure that Isaac would like to get involved in maybe building some proper FPV drones, because I know that the Neo 2 is a very good all-rounder, but let's not pretend it is an out-and-out FPV drone. I think this might just be the start of something very good. Watch this space.